In today's video, we are going to run through 5 relatively simple rules that you need to understand in order to do questions involving angles. The first of these rules is that the angles in a triangle always add up to 180 degrees. So if we label our angles A, B, and C, then we could say that a plus B plus C equals 180 degrees. The main place you will have to use this rule is when they give you 2 of the angles and ask you to work out the third. For example, in a question like this, here they have given us 2 of the angles, 65 degrees and 45 degrees, and asked us to work out the missing angle x. So because we know that these 3 angles should add together to make 180 degrees, we can just do 65 plus 45 plus x equals 180, and then we can rearrange that to find x. If we combine the 65 and 45, that will give us 110 plus x equals 180. And then if we subtract the 110 from each side, we will be left with x equals 70. So we know that our missing angle was 70 degrees. The next rule is that all of the angles around a point on one side of a straight line always add up to 180 degrees. So when we only have one angle like this, a bad angle will be 180 degrees, but if we had 2 angles, say A and B, then a plus B would equal 180 degrees. Or if we have a point with 3 angles A, B, and C, then those angles would all add up to 180 degrees, and so on for however many angles we had. The third rule is that the angles in a quadrilateral add up to 360 degrees, and remember, a quadrilateral is just a 4-sided shape. So we can represent this rule as a plus B plus C plus D equals 360 degrees. So if we had this question here, where we're trying to find out the missing angle y, we could say that 120 plus 140 plus 58 plus y equals 360. Or if we simplify it, then 318 plus y equals 360. Then we can just subtract 318 from both sides to find that y is 42 degrees. The next rule is that the angles around a point add up to 360 degrees, and like with a straight line, it does not matter how many angles there are. So for this drawing, a plus B plus C plus D equals 360, but for this one here, a plus B plus C equals 360. The last rule we need to cover is for isosceles triangles. It is not really one of the anglesome rules, but it comes up a lot in exams, so it is worth covering. Hopefully you remember that what makes isosceles triangles special is that 2 of their sides are the same length, which we show with these little dashes, and importantly, this means that these 2 angles at the bottom will always be the same size. To see how this is relevant, let us have a go at this question here. So in this question, they tell us that triangle PRQ is an isosceles triangle, which we can tell for ourselves anyway because it has these 2 dashes to tell us that these 2 sides are the same, and they are asking us to find out the missing angle x. Now, if this was a normal triangle, then we would not be able to do anything because we only have 1 angle out of 3, but because this is an isosceles triangle, we know that this angle here is also 35 degrees, and so we now have 2 out of the 3 angles. Then if we think back to our first rule, which remember said that the angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees, then we know that 35 plus x must equal 180. So we can simplify that to 70 plus x equals 180, and then subtract the 70 to get x equals 110 degrees. So to sum up the video, so far we have seen 5 rules. Rule 1 was that the angles in a triangle add to 180 degrees. Rule 2 was that the angles on a straight line add to 180 degrees. Rule 3 was that the angles in a quadrilateral add to 360 degrees. Rule 4 was that the angles in a circle add to 360 degrees. Rule 5 was that isosceles triangles have 2 equal angles because they have 2 equal sides. Before we finish, though, I just want to show you an example of a trickier exam question where you have to use multiple rules to find the missing values. Now, questions like this often look really tricky because there's a lot going on. The best way to approach them, though, is to ignore the particular letters that you are trying to find. So ignore the x and the y in this case, and just take a step back and look at what you have. For example, in this figure we have a quadrilateral on the left, and remember we know the angles in a quadrilateral add up to 360. We have a triangle on the right, so we know that inside this triangle the 3 angles will add to 180 degrees, and because it is an isosceles triangle, we also know that the bottom 2 angles will be the same, so we could add an x down here too. Then the last thing to notice is that in the middle here at point B we have a straight line that has been separated into two angles, so we know that these two angles must add to make 180 degrees. Now that we have identified all of the different rules that we might want to use, we can start to work out some angles, and it is normally easiest to just work out whichever angles you can one by one until you end up finding the angles that you need to answer the question. So here we could start with the isosceles triangle and say that 120 plus x equals 180, which we can then simplify to 120 plus 2x equals 180, then 2x equals 60, and finally x equals 30. So we know that both of these angles are 30 degrees. Now that we know this, we can move on to our straight line at B, where we know that this unknown angle plus 30 must equal 180. So we can subtract 30 from both sides to find that the unknown angle must be 150 degrees. And lastly, now that we know 3 out of the 4 angles in the quadrilateral, we can write it out as 108 plus 54 plus 150 plus y equals 360, or 312 plus y equals 360, so y equals 48 degrees. And that is it. We have found all of the angles, so we can now fill in our answers as x is 30 degrees and y is 48 degrees. Just remember that questions like this are quite tricky. Do not worry about trying to find the exact letters you are asked for straight away. Just work out whatever you can and fill in all the missing angles until you get your answers. Anyway, that is everything for this video.